office. And so she will be monitoring the of you on Zoom. I would ask that if you are on Zoom, please keep yourself muted until you might want to ask a question. We will have opportunities during the presentation today for you to ask questions. If you're on Zoom, feel free to write a question in Zoom chat, or unmute yourself and ask a question. And of course, if you're here in person, we'll recognize you. We are recording, as Jim said, we're recording today's class, and it will be made available on the RVAR YouTube channel for at least 90 days. And also at the end of the class, we are going to be providing a survey for those of you here in person, and we ask you to fill that out. And also for the on Zoom, we will have that emailed to you. And we're not only looking for feedback from today's class, but we're going to be looking for some input for your suggestions for future classes. Before we get started, I wanted to at least promote the next couple classes that we have coming here at RVAR. The September class is titled The Latest in Lending. Mark your calendars for Wednesday, September 24th. And as we know, there's been a lot of new things that we can do with lending. The RVAR October class is titled So You Want to Be a Landlord. Whether or not you're already a landlord or you're thinking about purchasing some rental property, this is the class you want to attend. And that will be on Wednesday, October 29th. And of course, online registration is open right now for both of those classes. Now for today's class, I want to introduce today's two speakers. They're going to demonstrate how to establish the list price by creating a comparative market analysis using one of 3 programs made available to you as a member of the Roanoke Valley MLS. Curtis Burchett is an owner agent with MKB Realtors, and Beth Powell is an agent with MKB Realtors. Beth is also the chair of the RVAR Education Committee. So, Curtis, I'll let you begin.
Good morning.
Morning.
Couple things first. My favorite number when it comes to rating is 4. So 1 to 4. I love 4s. On the class, the feedback form that you got here, if you have questions, it says the number is 954. It's actually 354. If you want to change that, if you have any questions about this, just let me know. As Leslie said, my name is Curtis Burchett. I am a realtor, I'm partner at MKB Realtors. I have been a realtor since 2002. And before I get started with what we're going to talk about today, The Price is Right, the question for the class. How many of you, by a show of hands in here, have been in the business for less than 5 years? How many have been between 5 and 10 years? How many have been over 10 years? Vast majority of the hands that were raised here have been in the business for less than 5 years. Well over half of the class. That means most of you have been in the business since COVID started. And COVID rocked our world in so many ways. But in the real estate industry especially, it rocked our world in ways that you can't imagine. What we're going to talk about today is trying to understand where the market is today, how to price in that. There's an old saying that I've always followed that when the market is a seller's market, he or she that gets the listings gets the gold. When it's a buyer's market, he or she that gets the listings pays the gold. Because it takes a long time to sell. Believe it or not, in past years, when it was a buyer's market, I used to have 50 or 60 listings at any given time, and they would be on the market for 60, 90, 100 days. And many of you that have been in the business for only 5 years, I'll tell you a little story. A realtor who will remain nameless in my office came to me about 1.5 years ago, and she said, my listing's been on the market for 12 days. And they haven't sold. What is wrong with it? And I'm like, you have no clue, no idea. I mean, those were very normal times. when you look back at history. And the current market, and this is just my opinion, but it's my opinion having lived it every day, and all of you are out there living it every day. We are in a transition phase as we speak. Little history. I've been a realtor since 2002. From 2002 until 2007, we were in a seller's market. 2008, the market crashed. And when the market crashed, we stayed in a buyer's market from 2008 until 2015, if you look at the inventory trends. It bottomed out around 2011, 2012. 2016 through 2019 was what I would use the term Shangri-La. It was a great time because buyers and sellers were sharing equally in pain and gain. In 2020, with COVID, we transitioned almost overnight in the spring of 2020 from a balanced market to an incredibly one-sided market where sellers control all the cards. And where we are now is we have this right here going on. We have sellers that have their friends and their neighbors that have sold in the last 3-4 years that got prices way up here. We have buyers that have bought in the last 3 or 4 years and paid way up here. Buyers are tired of doing that. Sellers are not tired of getting this. They're still wanting to get this. And our job as realtors is to try to give them an honest opinion of what's going on in today's marketplace. I am a very analytical person, as you're about to see. And numbers tell me stories. And the market analysis that we're going to talk about today is a house that I listed in May of this year. However, these same clients called me in 2014 and asked me to do a market analysis. I am a bit of a hoarder when it comes to keeping things. I still had that market analysis. And I'm going to share with you the statistical market analysis I did in 2014 and show you inventory trends versus inventory trends in April of 2025. Now, a little bit of history for you. As we sit here today, there's a little bit over 1,300 houses on the market. Active listed, 1,300. In 2006, in my office, there's an article that the Toronto Times did on marketing, and anyway, and in that article, there was a quote in there, or there was not a quote, but a statistical data. In June of 2006, there were 4,000 houses for sale in the Roanoke Valley. Who can tell me how many were on the market in 2021 in the Roanoke Valley? There were 400 in June of 2021. 600 the next year, 800 the next year, 1,000 the next year, and we've gotten up to 1,300 a little bit over this year. Now, so that tells you it's still, 2006 was a great time to sell. However, there was a lot of new construction, there was a lot of things before the collapse of 2008 happened. Some very prominent builders that I know that I won't mention by name, I was trying to negotiate with them prior to the crash of 2008 on the price of their housing, and they weren't very negotiable, rightly so. One of them said, no one has ever bought one of my houses and ever lost money when they resold it. And prior to 2008, they could say that. They do not say that anymore. So let's talk a little bit about this house that we're going to do a market analysis on. The house is a house over in North County. And on the screen, you'll see here the 2014 statistical market analysis. Now, Beth is going to kind of go over, if you have questions about how to do a statistical market analysis, I always do the simple one. I'm pretty simple. I follow the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. But so I always use the statistical market analysis, and every house that I list, this is the same analysis that I do. I tell my sellers when I sit down with them, now the first, and I'm not going to get into great detail about this, but when I get a phone call, when I get an email, and somebody says, hey, we're thinking about selling a house, the first phone call, the first email is just to get the appointment to get it to the dining room table. Once you're at the dining room table or in the living room sitting with them, I always tell them upfront a couple things. Number one, this is gonna be a two-step process. I am not smart enough to tell you today what the value of your house is. I know a lot of realtors are smarter than I am and do that. I don't. And I don't, I'm not a fan of that. The second thing is I tell them, I don't want to know what you think the value of your house is. They want to tell you. They want to tell you because they want to bias you. But what I tell them, I say, I'm gonna do a market analysis. And I'll be back together with you tomorrow. If necessary, I'll be back with you in 2 or 3 hours. I can put this together very quickly. And when I get together, I'm going to go over analysis with you. And at the end of the analysis, I'm going to give you a pricing recommendation as to where I see the current conditions. If my number is the same or higher than what you were hoping for, life is wonderful. You love me. If my number is less than what you were thinking for, one of two things are going to happen. Either one, we're going to have a meeting of the minds. We're going to compromise, meet someone in the middle or talk about it. Or two, we're going to shake hands and part friends. Back in 2002, when I got my real estate license, many of you that haven't been in the business long won't know, but a gentleman named Gary Dogan taught a class. Gary had a ponytail. Gary was a really cool individual. And he's teaching a real estate class so we can get a license. And on the board, he wrote the number one reason that realtors fail. And he wrote O period, P period, D period. Now, some of you have heard me talk before and may know what that is. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. The number one reason that realtors fail is, gotta remember, Gary was a country boy, overpriced dogs, overpriced listings. If you take a listing at a price that's higher than the market will support, more than likely, it's not gonna sell for that price. It's gonna take longer to sell. And when it does sell, it's gonna sell for less than it would have if you had priced it right to begin with. So I tell people all the time, when I was in high school, I was very tall, I was very shy, and I was very skinny. Now I'm just tall. And I do the same thing with each of my clients. I would rather tell them what they need to hear and what they're going to hear than to try to just get along and hope and pray that it will work out. So the more upfront you can be with your clients about pricing and condition and all those factors, the better your results will be. Results are in the numbers. I'll just briefly tell you mine. In the last year, the Roanoke Valley's average list of sales price has been 97.9%. Mine has been 101.6%. I price them right and I sell them faster and I sell them at or above asking price. I've had some below, but more above. If you price them right, you will get contracts in a week or 2 weeks. And in today's market, we're still getting bidding wars. Not like we were, but if you price it right, the chances of you getting a stronger contract, not only price-wise, but condition-wise, are better. I can't tell you how many buyers I have come to me and said, the house has been on the market for 38 days, what's wrong with it? That's how they're conditioned now. So you want to avoid that when you're listing a house. Now, if a house is worth $500,000, you can price it for $300,000 and sell it tomorrow. Everybody can do that. You can also, if a house is worth $500,000, you can buy the listing by telling the seller it's worth $650,000. And it's never going to sell. And at the end of 6 months after your listing expires, they're going to tell all their friends and families that Curtis Burchett couldn't sell anything. He told me he's worth $650,000. So your reputation is the most important thing that you have. So when you're sitting there, don't be afraid to be honest with your sellers and tell them what they need to hear. And it's a great way, in my opinion, for you to do your market analysis without knowing what they think. Because if somebody tells you a number, it's human nature. I want to please. You want to please. And if they tell you 400 and you think 350, you can try to figure a way to get to 400. If you don't know, then you don't have any bias to do that. So on your computer screens, you should see now that there is a, okay.
Saying something else?
It's up here.
No, we don't see it on the screens up here. We need to share it on the screen.
Okay. I'm analytical, but I'm not that knowledgeable.
share it in Zoom.
While she's working on that, does anybody in here have any questions at this point?
You show it how you want us to share it. So
Curtis, what's a healthy housing stock number?
A healthy housing stock number was the question for those of you online. Whenever I do my market analysis, I use a formula. I tell people 0 to 3 months supply of inventory is a seller's market. 3 to 6 months is what we call a balanced market. That's what I call a healthy market. 3 to 6 months supply. And then 6 months or higher is a buyer's market. And in very simple terms, how you arrive at that is you take a look at your active inventory and you take a look at how many houses have sold over the last 12 months. So let's just say for simple math, there's 4,800 houses sold over the last 12 months. Divide that by 12, and that tells you 400 houses have sold per month. If there are 800 houses currently on the market, tells you it's a 2-month supply of inventory. If there are 1,300 houses on the market, that tells you there's a 4.1 month supply of inventory. And I always tell my sellers 0 to 3 seller, 3 to 6 balance, 6 and 6 plus buyer. Now, you're going to see here that I do hit the market as a whole broadly. I look at the market and say Roanoke Valley, their entire marketplace. Then if the house is in this case, North County, then if it's a specific style of house, I would do a statistical market analysis for colonials, 2-story, ranches, patios, whatever it may be. Then I may break it down to number of bedrooms, number of baths. You'll see all of this when we can eventually get this up here. But once you get to a point, the statistical market analysis will point you to a pretty tight range where that house should be priced. And then you're not guessing, and you have data to back it up. While they're working on this, I can't tell you how many times that I've been in competitive listing presentations. And I wasn't the highest price. We got it? Sure. And I wasn't the highest price. However, I got the listing. And I would ask why. I would first off say thank you. But then I would ask why. And they said, well, you provided that data that makes sense, as opposed to an opinion. Opinions are like certain body parts. We all have them. However, data is almost irrefutable. So anyway, so all of you online, you should be able to see this. In here, you should be able to see this. This is a statistical market analysis. That was done in April of 2014. And you will see that there were 3,225 active listings. Would we like to have that today as 1,500 licensed realtors and 1,300 houses for sale? Or 2021 when there were 1,500 licensed realtors and 400 houses for sale. 4,269 houses sold. The average sales price was $195,000. The median was $156,000. There was a 9.1 month supply of inventory. It was a buyer's market. Now, for the sake of time, we're going to go to the next page. This is the same market analysis for the Roanoke Valley in April of 2025. 980 houses for sale. Average sales price went up to $368,000, and it was a 2.4 month supply of inventory. Some of you have only been in the business for 5 years, but you can use this data and say, this is where the market was. You can remember the last 25 years. At MKB, Kit has for the last 25 or 30 years, the data by month and year by year and all that stuff. And your brokers have access to that as well. So you can educate your clients about the history so that you can explain that. Now, the next one, like I said, we start, now, at the bottom of this, you'll see the average sales price from 2014 to 2025 increased 88%. The median increased 90% in 11 years. The next one is because the house that we're looking at is in Northside High School. And those of you that know the MLS, Northside High School has a couple different areas, 220, 221, there's different areas. So I just choose Northside High School, that way I get all of the high school power. And in 2014, there was a 6.9-month supply, 152 houses. Average sales price was 161 and the median was 151. Fast forward to 2025. Only 27 houses, 1.2 months supply of inventory in Northside High School. And the average sales price had gone all the way up to 317,000, which was an increase of 97% for the average and 96% for the median. The difference between the average and the median, the average just takes all the sales and does an average. The median, half or above, half or below. When you do a statistical market analysis, Beth's going to show you how to do this a little bit later. It automatically defaults to just the average. You have to click a button to choose the median if you want that in as part of your presentation. Next page. Now we're going to start narrowing down even further. We're going to look at Northside High School, the same style. And this particular house was a 2-story colonial. So you may notice that I picked 1.5 2-story and colonials. And there was a 10.6-month supply in 2014. Average sales price was 221, the median was 215. And there were 37 houses for sale of that style in Northside High School. 2025, 13 houses, I beg your pardon. The average sales price was 373,000. The median, there was a 2.4-month supply of inventory, and it increased 69 and 81% respectively.
You got a question?
Yes.
Do you ever pick out the outliers when you're doing this for, at any point, do you like pull out the $30,000 houses and the $1 million houses?
Yes.
Repeat the question.
The question was, do I ever pull out outliers that are, I guess, for lack of a better word, statistical outliers that will skew the numbers? Yes. As an example, I was working with a realtor in her office yesterday who was trying to price a ranch built before 1990, certain square footage, certain numbers. And there was one house that was, for lack of a better word, Mac Daddy updated. It had every update on demand. And the other, there were like 9 of them. The other 8 were similar. This one was an outlier and priced much higher. And I told us to take that out because her clients were not going to update it. So, you know, this is something you get to play with. Now, the results will be in the performance, in the data later, how successful you are. And if you skew the numbers and you take outliers that should have been in there, well, then, you know, you're going to be skewed. But so, yes, I do. So in 2014, you looked at in 2025, in 2014, in the Woodlands neighborhood where this particular house is, I did, instead of a 12-month analysis, I went back and looked, and the computer data that the MLS had on the computer goes back to the year 2000. Doesn't go back to the beginning of the time, but 2000. So there have been 57 houses for sale, had sold. There was 1 for sale for 219, 1 pending, and the average 155, the median 158. This particular house, just for grins and giggles, I love data, is 2,814 finished square feet. The average cost per square foot in the Woodlands has been $77.59. You may see that it'll give you a range of $16.19 all the way up to $138 with an average and a median. My client almost fainted when I told him 218. You know, they're looking at, whoa, we're thinking much higher than that. I'm like, don't worry, we're going to get there. The next one is a statistical market analysis in 2025. And you'll see that this neighborhood had not really, it was a neighborhood that people moved into and didn't move out of. And it wasn't a huge neighborhood. So the average sales price had gone up a total of 16%. which the average cost per square foot had gone up $89, which had bumped us up to $252. Now, the next page here is just in 2014, I pulled the tax records. And I included tax rates. So the tax assessed value in 2014 was $203,000. Back then, in 2014, houses were selling at or much closer to tax assessment than they are today, in quite often the case. So for grins and giggles, would always include 10, 15, 20% above, and you'll see in my best doctor's handwriting there, 10%, 223, 15, and 20%. Then on this, when you print it off, it gives you the square footage, but it's too small to read. So in my handwriting, I filled out what the actual handwriting was there. If you go back to 2025, the tax assessment was $311,000, which was a 53% increase in the tax assessment from 2014. 53% above 311 put us in the 372 range, just for grins and giggles. And I filled in the acreage because a lot of times they don't put the acreage, they just put one lot. And a lot of realtors will see that one lot and think that's 1 acre. It's not. You need to research it's actually 0.28 or 0.29. Make sure you get that right, because a lot of people put in 1 acre, and then when they sell it, they find it's 0.28, and then you get a problem. Next page. In 2025, I added this group. I did a area 210, which is the side of Northside High School that this particular house is on. Same style, 4 or more bedrooms, 2 or more baths, and a garage under. Those were the primary factors. This house was in great shape, well maintained, didn't have a lot of deferred maintenance. And if you look at that, the average sales price was $448,000 over the last 12 months. Now, you look at that and you say, take that on its face value, you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna recommend 440, 450 for these folks. However, you got to remember, this house was 2,814 finished square feet. The average cost per square foot of those 7 houses that were comparable was $143.43. Do the math, 403,612. Now, one of the things that a lot of people ask me is, how do you make adjustments? And I used to, if you get some of it's been around for a while, I've taught this class before, and I used to do a lot of detailed adjustments for number of bedrooms, number of baths, garage, no garage, things like that. So for grins and giggles, I included one more thing to show my clients. They have a garage under, which means the garage is in the basement. If everything was the same, but it had an attached garage, the average sales price went up to $472, a difference of about $25,000. So if you were to ask me, what's the difference between having a garage under versus an attached garage? Say somewhere around $25,000. In 2014, in my best doctor's handwriting, my seller's net sheet recommended a list price of $242,500. I gave them a worst case scenario, and I always give what I think the sales price, what the list price should be, what I think the best case scenario is, and what I think the worst case scenario. Now, how I arrive at that is I do a 5% swing between what I recommend and the worst case scenario. And I tell my clients in today's market, if you're going to perform at or above my recommended list price, it's going to happen in the first 2 to 4 weeks. If it's on the market more than 4 weeks, that's when you're going to have to start adjusting price. And that's when the 233 or a number between 242 and 233 might come into play. Now, how did I didn't just pick that out of the air. Years ago, when I looked at for 23 years in the market, 24 years in the marketplace, there's been about a 4 to 5% swing in the Roanoke Valley overall. Mine has been less than 3% in 24 plus years. So I use a 5% worst case scenario. And the net sheet that I put on here, you'll see that 2025 has changed a little bit, but I put on the settlement agent's fees of $100, deed prep of $100. Back then, the seller was doing the termite inspection. Now the buyer does it. I would put miscellaneous for overnighting payoffs, Notary Republic of $200. I now put $500 all the time, because if they're in an HOA, there's going to be a $200 or $300 HOA package. Even if they're not, I'd rather be a little high than a little low. The grantor's tax is $1 per thousand of the tax assessment. or the sales price, whichever's higher. In this case, the tax assessment was 205, 243, and then brokerage. I always, even today, put 6%. Now, we obviously have to explain to people that when we list your house, let me go to 2025, sorry. My 2025 is a little cleaner. I figured out how to put it all on a spreadsheet and type it as opposed to handwriting. So it's a whole lot easier to read. But as an example, my 2025 number for these folks was $399,888. Now, any of you that know me know that all of my listings end in 888. And I'm gonna tell you why. It's a way several years ago, about 6 years ago, I had a listing in Southwest County, it was 324,950, been on the market for 30 days, had not sold. And I read somewhere, and I'm a voracious learner, because I have a very low knowledge base, so it's very easy for me to learn new things. But I read that many cultures are numerically influenced. And the number 8, which is a sign of infinity, turned right side up, is a number of good fortune for many cultures, including the Oriental culture and the Indian culture. So, all the owners, I said, we need to do a price adjustment. They said, we agree, it's been 30 days. How much, 5,000? I said, no, $62. They did just that. They laughed. And I explained the number 8. We dropped it from 324,950, which is what most everybody does, to 324,888. The very next day, the manager of Ichiban, or Eagle Gentleman, wrote a contract on the house. 42 days later, closing, I shook his hand, said, thank you. I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? He said, sure. I said, I've been on the market for 30 days. You hadn't shown it, hadn't shown any interest. What was the exciting factor? He said, well, I've been looking at it for a week or two and thinking about Powell and making an appointment to see it. And when you changed it to 888, it was like a sign. I don't care. I've done it where I will ask people, what's your birthday? A lot of people would have a birthday that would be 4 numbers, 10, 25. And I said, well, let's do mine, July 27th. So I used to have a lot of them that end in 727. My birthday's July 27th, so many good. Whatever, just something to be different. Because if a buyer comes into town and they look at 5 houses and 4 of them end in 950 and 1 of them ends in 888 or 614 or whatever, which one's different? Which one stands out? That's what we're hired for. We're hired to make their house stand out. So, talk about the brokerage. In today's market, as we all know, when we list a house, the fee that your brokerage dictates to you is whatever it may be. MKB's is 3% on the list side. Mine is 3% on the list side. So when I list a house, I fill out 3%. And then the paragraph underneath that, it says the buyer brokerage, if any, will be negotiated at the time of contract. I'm paraphrasing basically what it says. I prepare my clients to be prepared for 6%. And probably 99% plus since the enactment, 6% has been very common and the seller has paid it. There's been a couple occasions where my buyer has paid it. There's been a couple occasions where my seller refused to pay it and we've lost deals. So you just have to prepare them and have that conversation, that hard conversation with them. And so you put your net numbers there and that shows everything. Then the results. I said I would keep this to about 30 minutes. I'm approaching the 30-minute time frame. This was the house that we're talking about. 7268 Twin Forks was listed for $399,888. It was listed on May 22nd, went under contract on May 25th with multiple offers. Haven't closed yet because the sellers, this is something that all of you are going to hear a lot of if you haven't. I have on my desk probably 30 or 40 manila folders of people that I've met with over the last 2 or 3 years that want to sell their house. And I tell them what they can sell their house for, and they're like, I love you. And I say, then what do you need to do next? Well, we need to buy a house. We want to buy. They tell me, I tell them what it's going to cost to buy, and they say, I don't love you anymore. These folks were the same way. They said, we are downsizing. We're going to move into a 1-level living. Y'all heard that before. Everybody and their brother's looking for 1-level living. When we listed the house, I told them, I said, let's list it at $399,888, even though the market analysis would point me in the low 4s. And here's why I did that. On Realtor.com, on Zillow, on Trulia, on Homes.com, every real estate website out there allows buyers to search in $25,000, $50,000, and $100,000 price ranges. I'm a country boy from Pulaski. I like for my listing to be the pretty girl at the dance that everybody wants to dance with. So at $399, my house was competing $300 to $400, $350 to $400, $375 to $400. At $403, my house is competing $4 to $5, $4 to $425, $4 to $450. And my house is the girl sitting in the corner wishing she were dancing. Dancing is a euphemism or whatever for jokes. So when you are near a price break, particularly $100,000 price breaks, I am a fan of being right below that price break. Now, there is another strategy called bridging. That's most of you probably know about, some of you don't. If you put it at $399, $888, you don't show up when somebody searches $4 to $4 or $4 to $5. But if you bridge it and put it at $400, you show up in the $3 to $4 and the $4 to $5. Now, does $400 stand out? In my opinion, you know, the 888 is something that catches somebody's attention. Realtors will call me or clients will call me and say, why don't you come up with a price of $399, $888? And with a straight face, I say I did a detailed market analysis to the dollar. But then that loosens them up. And then I get to talk about it. I get to sell the house. There are realtors out there, none in this room, none online, but there are realtors out there that are what I call the 3 Ps of realtors, which is put a sign in the yard, put it in the MLS, and pray it sells. And that's pretty much what they do. The 4th P, which is proactively marketing, proactively pricing, proactively advising your clients, is the most important P, which will make you a more successful realtor. And that's what we do. So as an example, when I get that phone call, I get the opportunity to lighten the mood a little bit, and then I get to tell them about this great house. I look at them, this great lot in a cul-de-sac with gleaming hardwoods and updated granite countertops or whatever it may be. You never know when you're selling and who you're selling to. As a realtor, you're always selling. You're always, I mean, you're at a grocery store, somebody asks how the market is. They might be getting ready to buy a house, might be getting ready to sell a house. And how you respond is going to go a long ways as to whether or not they decide to call you. You know, you say the market sucks and I can't wait to get out of here. It's terrible. I were to sell a house in China, you know, then they're never going to use you. But you know, you need to be honest. And I tell people right now, we are in a transitional marketplace where buyers and sellers are head-butting, and it's more important than in the last 5 years to price your house right. Last thing I'll leave you with is I tell my clients, I want to use the 3 bears philosophy of pricing the house. Be too hot, I don't want to be too cold, I want to be just right. And when you're just right, you'll sell quicker and you'll sell cleaner. Any questions? Yes, Jeff.
Do you still use your adjustment spreadsheet like you used to? Or do you mainly statistically price it?
Yeah, the question was, do I still use my adjustment spreadsheet? On individual circumstances, I do. I have found with the results that by doing the statistical market analysis, and then occasionally I will print off the houses and I'll show that client the houses. I don't get as detailed into a $5,000 adjustment for a 4th bedroom versus a 3rd bedroom, a $3,000 adjustment for a 3rd bath versus a 2nd full bath, things like that, unless I need it. Usually when I get to this point, after I've drilled down in 3 to 5 statistical market analysis, I've got a pretty good idea where that price range should be. And I feel very confident in my ability to price the house. Any other? Yes.
Did you finish saying what the outcome of this was?
Yes, it is under contract, above asking price. And the great thing about this, thank you, because you remind, I got a home opinion. My sellers were very concerned about selling this house and having nowhere to go. Well, the first weekend we got multiple offers. We accepted one that said you can have all the time you want to find suitable housing. We've been under contract since May 25th. I am meeting this afternoon at 1 o'clock Hopefully finalize a contract on the house that they're looking to buy that's off market. If not, we're gonna wait. It's funny, the buyers agent, my sellers have called me numerous times and said, I'm getting nervous, I'm getting nervous. And I'll call the list, the buyers agent. And she said, are you sellers getting nervous? Are you sellers thinking about taking it off? I'm like, no, they still want to sell it. They've already done a stage sale, they've done yard sales. We're just waiting to find right. Well, we homeschool, we want to be in that neighborhood, we want the house and we don't care how long it takes. So, I told my sellers when we were sitting there, we had multiple offers. And I said, we could probably go another week and get more offers. But guess what? We got above asking price. We got language, they wanted to do inspections, but they said they would exclude anything under $10,000. And they said we could have all the time we want to find suitable housing. My granddaddy told me years ago, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, don't be greedy. There you go. Any other questions? Yes.
Why are underneath garages about $25,000 less than that?
Put yourself in the shoes. Would you rather, when you come in with your groceries?
Yep.
Would you rather walk in? The question is, why are garage unders worth less than attached? Two reasons primarily. Number one, you have to go upstairs from the garage. Number two, you lose half the basement. Your ability to have a more finished square footage or storage space is diminished because half of the basement is taken up by the garage versus having it on the level. Any other questions? I know we need to wrap this up. We need to keep it tight, but if you have any other questions, you have my number. Shoot me a text, call me. If you want a copy of this, I think it's all online. I think they have it, but I'm happy to send it to you as well. Thank you very much.
Come back to follow. Yeah. Okay, so. We're going to look at the MLS now. So this is the home in question on the MLS. And yes, I'll show you briefly how to do the market analysis he did. First, I want to show you the CRS tax info. And a lot of you probably already look at that. But when you look at that, you probably haven't investigated these other things. You look at the property report and that's sort of a summary of what's on there, but we have a comparables. And you can either do a CMA and client report where you put their name in and all that. I just do the quick CMA.
Are you?
Are you trying to show on that?
We don't see this.
And share his, start sharing your.
It's the same share, you just need to change the screen. Change the screen.
Jim, thank God you're here.
I'm gonna be looking at a whole bunch of things. Right. Always on purpose. Machine. Yeah. So every time I switch it, we should read it out and use it up. Okay, so let's go off the Sierra static. So we're here at our Twin Forks. So we're gonna select CRS tax data. It looks like it's staying with us. Somebody's holding their mouth right. So besides the CRS tax data, we have a comparables. So when we do a quick CMA. It will default, and it's gonna always show you the Zestimate, which I like because everybody talks about Zillow anyhow, so why not talk about it? So it's gonna automatically go to 3/4 of a mile, which is too many. So if we go down to a 1/4 mile. And we don't wanna do the last 12 months, because 12 months ago, the market was completely different than it is today. So I typically go 3 months, 6 at tops, but if we go the last 3 months and hit submit. It's a whole lot less. Now, this one is a townhouse, so we don't want that, so I'm gonna check this box. And I'm gonna say remove checked. Cause that doesn't compare. And then I can look and see what this other one is. It's sold because it's got a little red tag, so if I click on Deerwood. It doesn't have a garage, but it is a 2-story, so that might have some impact. So I'm gonna close that. And let's see what it looks like now with those two. It says cost per square foot. And it has average sales price. Now, it's including this, which is just pending. So it doesn't know what it's really gonna sell for. So we can keep changing it, and we can say, well, what is it the next, say, 6 months? Does it give us any more? Gives us some more. And this one is finished and unfinished. This is unfinished. That one does not have a basement, so let's take out that one. There's no basement at all. Isn't gonna compare, so we'll say remove checked. We can look at cross timbers and see what that's like. There's no images, so it wasn't a sale on the MLS, it was just a private sale. It sold for $191. It was purchased by a realtor. So we can just keep doing that. And that's how we find what the price should be. That's one way. So now, if we were gonna be looking at this and look at how to do the statistical analysis, we know that this is 2-story. It's 4.2. So if I do a quick search, and we know it's gonna be North County, and I wanna do active, pending, closed. And I don't wanna go back a whole year. I wanna go back, let's say 180 days. And then I'm gonna come down and I do want detached. Single family. Roanoke County. Roanoke County North. Style of house, I'm gonna just leave it at 2-story. That gives us 47. Total bedroom, let's say 3 to 5. Total baths, 2 to 3. Gives us 32. Basement, yes. Gives us 22. Primary covered parking, yes. Garage, and we can say attached and under. So we're down to 17. Let's see what we got. So whatever we have that looks like it's could be a possible match, we're gonna check. I'm just gonna very, very quickly look at a couple of these. So let's just take a couple of them for right now. We're gonna come over to CMA. And we're gonna say use selected. And then what we do is we choose the statistical CMA. And I say next. And what I wanna do is I wanna have a median calculation. And let's view it. So that was only 3. So it has 1 active at 435. 2 pending, 1 closed. So that shows you the median. That's how you get to the statistical market analysis that he was using. So it's just doing the quick search and then doing that. Okay, now for our other piece, let's look at the RPR. And if you don't have any of these same things up here that I do, all you're doing is anything that's got a star in front of it is up here at the top. If you didn't want it at the top, you just simply uncheck the star. So RPR is under the search. So RPR will log in automatically. Unless it's your very first time, it'll log in automatically. And you can put this app on your phone as well and use it out in the field. So now, if we want to put 7268 Twin Forks, there it is because I looked it up this morning. And the other thing is that last thing I looked up was something about leasing. So I want to uncheck lease and check for sale. Now, what it looks like right here is the recommended value is 396,580. But it gives you a range of this, and it gives you a confidence level of this many stars. Sometimes, especially rural properties, you'll end up with 1 star, or you might not end up with any recommended value at all.
Where is it pulling this information from? What?
It's pulling it from Flex.
Just based on the subject property.
On the subject property, I can view details. And it will show me a map of what it's pulling from, and then I can also select or unselect some of those. So it's showing this one was 7226 Twin Forks, which is just a 1-car garage. That's the one that didn't have any garage that we looked at briefly. That one's a split level, and I wouldn't count that at all. So I can scroll down from that map. And I'll also see each of those as well, and I could click on it and I could look at it on the MLS. So if I wanted to look at this one, I would just click on it and it would open just that one.
Where are you deselecting if you want to take it off?
I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Question was deselecting. So when you are looking at these details, you can come down to refine value. And it's going to want you to go ahead and look at listing facts and public facts and make sure they're the same. Remember what Curtis said about lot size 1 acre? That was listed under the public facts. So there we want to make a correction. Home improvements, if there's a home improvement, you can add a home improvement. If you know the approximate cost. If I said I wanted to add a mid-range bath remodel, and I'm going to put that it was this year January. And I paid $10,000. I'm gonna say add improvement, and look what it did. It took the 6430 and added that, because you're not gonna get dollar for dollar. So I'm gonna trash can that. If there's something that it needs, you know that it needs, a kitchen remodel or something, you could put that in and put that, and it would add improvement, and it would add what it needs, and it would subtract from that. So if you said you wanted a kitchen and you wanted to spend $25,000 and say add improvement, see how it took that off? It also has, per the conditions, whether it's average for each of these fields. When you come over to the CMA tab, it has a place for either a regular or an advanced. And this is where you're gonna change those homes. So if you edit anything about the home, then you're gonna search for comps. And show the comps and the dates. And then you come down to review them. And the value of them, you could say what you want and don't want. It gives you every little detail you could want, and so you could say, I don't want, let's see which one was the. So let's say we didn't want the one with the 1-car garage. So I'm gonna scroll all the way down here, I'm gonna say include my reports. No. And I'm gonna say update. So now the only ones that you're gonna see are the other 3. When you create a report, they have a lot of new reports. I go to the create legacy because the shortest report you can make and not overwhelm somebody with information, whether it's a buyer or a seller, either one, is the mini. All the rest of them are very long. So if I do a mini report, and I say run report, it's gonna run that report and it's gonna come up when it's ready, which usually takes a matter of seconds. It says download report. So it shows you a picture of the home from the listing photos, has your information here. So that information it's putting there is from your profile. So if there's something that's not right in your profile, you need to correct it. Shows you where the house is, the approximate price, all that information that was on the front. If we had corrected this, it wouldn't have the 1 acre. Shows you on a map, gives you basic information about it. Has a livability index from AARP. And then it has all the listing photos. Gives you property history on values, the assessed values for every year. The legal description. And then it gets a little personal. It tells you exactly the mortgage records from 2007 and 2023. In 2019, when it was recorded, it was an interfamily transfer. Then it shows you comps of things that were sold by square footage and bedrooms. And neighborhood information. Now, one other thing that I'll show you too, and I'll send this out afterwards, is I used to use something that would show you how much each improvement cost. The NAR provided that. They don't anymore. They stopped doing it. What the NAR did is this one. And they stopped it 10 years ago. So they have a variety of reports on that. Also, there's another one available that's similar, but it doesn't. Oh, that one won't open, okay. There's another one that's similar to the one that we used to have, but it's not quite as good anymore. We had a really great one from the NAR. And I'm happy to send you the old one. So the RPR is usually my first go-to. When I go to look at something on the RPR, I'll take a quick look before I talk to anybody or go meet with anybody on what the estimated is, before I go see them and see what the house condition is like. That's what I do. You see where you drop this now because there's something to catch the mouse. So that's what I do first off. Questions so far? Slamming you with a lot of technical information.
What's RVR stand for?
Real property resource. I think. Yes,
So once you made the adjustments to the initial comps that came up that gave that estimate, that RPR estimate for the competence, and you made some updates. If you went back in, would that be different now?
yes, if I had done a home improvement adjustment. And I added something in. I'll go back to the RPR. You can also do it on that.
And maybe deselected, if you had deselected some of the comps,
Yes,
that would change it, okay.
yes. And if you come over to the edit CMA. Then you would go down through and you'd have to go through and confirm the facts about the home. And then you would choose your comps. And then make adjustments. So these are the comps.
Because sometimes you'll see that the Zestimate and RPR are fairly wide, different.
Well, if you're on the
Widely
CMA, the actual one that's with the CRS,
Mhm,
on that one, it also has home improvement.
got it.
And so you can do something for home improvement here, and that's where it gives you this cost versus value, which is how I learned about that initially. And so if you added an improvement. you can add something there. And you could say, what is it that's being recruit? Let's say, let's do a bathroom remodel. And we'll say the $10,000. And it's mid. And we'll say submit. And that's adding, you get about 70%, so it add about $7,000. So you can add whatever. This one is a little easier than the RPR because it doesn't ask you the date. The RPR one will ask you the date.
You do all three?
I will do all three. If I'm in a quick hurry, I'll do the RPR, to be quite honest. I'll do that one first. If I just need to throw a ballpark number out, that's the one that I trust the most for me personally.
Said 1%. Share, like you're gonna give one to the client.
Yes.
RPRs will be.
Yes. Okay. Oh, sorry, what, do I do the RPR? Sometimes I'll, as the only one, and yes, I do, if somebody wants to really press me for a number, I'll give them the RPR, I'll give them a range, I don't ever give just one number. I think that's, in my opinion, hasn't worked well, I always give them a range of something, so, and usually, I wanna know what improvements they had before I go see the house, and then when I see the house, I can adjust a little bit on the fly. Any other questions from Zoom? Okay. All right. So the RPR one, also, the other thing you can do about the RPR in looking for anything, if we're looking at this home and we want to see what's gone on around it. When I come over to the tax information, I can click on the map. And it'll say view larger map. So when it says view larger map, then I'm able to look at the neighbors' properties and down the street and across the street. The internet's just a little bit slower here than. Come on. Somebody forgot to feed the hamster.
Question actually for both Beth and Curtis, who's we're waiting on the internet. Comparing apples to apples is easy. What do you do when you get kind of a unicorn property? Where there's been a lot of perhaps regressive building around a big old house that was there by itself for a long time, and then the neighborhood gets dropped in on a few acres and the houses are half the size and not quality, or vice versa. You've got a little old house in a place and all these mansions kind of come up. You, Beth, put in, I think, 1/4 mile in 3 months. How far are you willing to go out to kind of find something that's comparable? At what point do you recommend your clients, you need to just get an appraisal because.
The question is, when there's a unicorn out there, what do you do?
That's a good question.
What I do is I try to figure out what's unique about that unicorn. Now, trying to use the word unique when describing a house, because that means there's a very limited market ability, but you can't look geographically. You can't look in a small area. You gotta look market wide. Well, I will go as far as the market data that I have access to. So if it's in Franklin County, then I will look in rural areas in Bogota, Bedford, Craig County, and try to find, what's unique, what's unique about this property. Okay, 10 acres. It's a 1800-ish farmhouse. Then I search market wide for 1,800-ish farmhouses on 5 or more acres.
So you go out in that
Yeah.
locality
And then,
basically,
you know,
or. in a
yeah,
radius
Because
as far as
the
you-
Roanoke Valley, you know, is our entirety of our marketplace. And when you're looking at a unique property that is like that, the fact that it's in Franklin County or Craig County is really not a difference. What you have there is a lifestyle buyer. The lifestyle buyer is looking for that particular feature or that particular style, and they don't care whether it's in Franklin or Craig. They just want that. So you gotta look and try to find your comps there, and sometimes it's very hard. And then you have to do what I say, what Zillow does. Those of you that are familiar, Zillow does what's called a WAG. Anybody know what a WAG is? Zillow is a wild ass guess. I call Zillow's a swag, a scientific wild ass guess. You have to do the best swag that you can do in those unique properties to try to arrive at a value. And then when all else fails, you can go to do an appraisal and have an appraiser come in and do it. Those of you that are appraisers in the room, I'm going to apologize in advance for this comment. Appraisers look at what has happened in the past, don't necessarily look at necessarily what's going on currently in today's market. And I've had houses that had an appraisal way up here when the market value was here and vice versa. You know, some are very, very good, others are not as good. So I'm careful about, and I've had sellers come to me and say, I got an appraisal for 600. I'm like, great, my market analysis said 500. And here's why.
Okay, so we're looking at the subject property here. So we can look at neighboring properties. So we can click on it with our left mouse and it'll say when it last sold. Well, that one sold clear back in '86, so that's not of any help. How about this one? That was 2013, that's not much help. So I can go around and I can look to see. And if it's really that everybody stayed in place quite a while, which I think is what Curtis had mentioned before, you may not see anything that's helpful. But this is a way that I can look and see what's gone on that street. Everybody stayed here a very long time. So that's one way that I look. Along with the RPR, I'll look to see what other things sold in the area. And I'll just click on them. And I can adjust this. I can look at aerial, I can look at bird's eye. So I can look at it this direction. And I can come over here to the next street. That one was 2020, that's at least a little bit. So let's take a look at it, see what kind of house it was and when it sold. It might not have sold, it might have just, well, it has a picture, so that tells you that it was probably on the MLS. And that's Woodlands 2, so that's the next subdivision over. So when you scroll to the very bottom, if it was on the MLS, you'll see it listed here. So then I could actually click on the listing. And I could see what it was, I could look at the photos of the house. See if that compares, that's only 3 and 2, so that doesn't help me any. But at least I know what else has sold in the area. This whole thing so I can see where I need. Here we go. So that's over here in a completely different subdivision. That's 2003, 1991. So these folks have been here a long time, so that's not a whole lot of help to me. But sometimes it is. And that's a help in itself because that tells me, hey, nobody's really moved from this area. this is a completely different neighborhood over here, so this really doesn't, in Wild Cherry Court, I know, are condos or townhouses. And this is a completely different neighborhood over here. So it doesn't really compare either. And if you're not sure what something is, you can look and say, hey, what is this over here? So it's another reason to put it on the aerial to get your footing. So that one is just a property report and view larger map. That's all it is. View larger map. It allows you to click on them and see what it is. You can do that in the tax record too, but it's so easy to just do this from one click. So when you look at the RPR, and you want to refine the value, that's where you do your improvements or what you need. So if I did a home improvement, mid-range bathroom, this is the one that has to have the date, which I'm not wild about. So I'm just gonna pick a date and I'm gonna say $10,000. And add improvement. That's the one that it adds, that's how much it adds. And that's also helpful if someone says, hey, I think I'd like to update my bathroom, is that gonna, help my home price? Well, that's where you can put it in and say, well, if you're just doing it to sell, it's probably not, you're not gonna get your money back out of it, so are they willing to do that?
What is your experience on the level of confidence with somebody? Because that is a common question. If I do some things to my kitchen and spend this, will I get it back? How much more will I get back? Have you had experience where that's kind of fairly accurate?
The question is, if somebody wants to make improvements, is it fairly accurate? That's what I use the chart for, and when I looked at the chart before getting ready for this class, I was shocked because it was from 2014. And I'm like, wow, but the chart, which comes from NAR, is what I usually give to folks. And I say, here's an example that you can go down through, and it lists most home improvements and what it is that it would cost and what you would get in return, ROI. So short of doing that, this is a good way to do it. And if they're not sure how much it's gonna be, they could get a free estimate for their bath or their kitchen or whatever it is that they need done. And if you're representing a buyer and you know that the house needs a new roof or whatever it is, put that in here. So if I took this, you see how it added in the value. If you knew that it needed a roof and it was gonna cost, let's just say $40,000, and say add improvement, say, well, you're asking $396, it's gonna cost me $40,000. Then you can have something hard and fast to provide to with an offer, or at least explain to your buyer, if you know that you're gonna need to do this, this is what you're looking at.
It's interesting, the needed improvements are a hard reduction of that number, but that's.
Yes. Correct. The home improvements in the first section are for improvements. This says by needed improvements. So needed improvements subtracts and the other add. We're about out of time here. Anything else anybody needs to know?
Are appliances or furnace hot water heater in there also?
Appliances are not, as far as adding, it would just be for kitchen. HVAC is there. And they've got roofing as well, so if you did roofing, and it's gonna wanna know how much you spent on. So if you knew you spent $20,000. And yeah, I don't think it'll do it without a date, no, it's gonna prompt you for a date, so you put the date in there, whatever it was, say add improvement, and so. Of the $20,000, that's gonna add about 12,000 in value. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yes.